The New Orleans Saints may have landed that physical wide receiver that they're looking for, and he's probably going to make the roster. We got all of that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, New Orleans visits with a top remaining free agent and just might sign him later on this offseason. They also added another arm to their quarterback room, deepening the quarterback conversation over the course of this offseason. And we're going to lead everything off with the New Orleans Saints signing a big physical receiver who's probably going to make the roster. We got all that for you on today's episode. We appreciate you, whether it's your first time or your next time, being here with us this time, making us your first listen, and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On Monday, the New Orleans Saints announced that they have signed veteran wide receiver Donovan Peoples-Jones, and I'm telling you right now, he's probably going to make the 53-man roster. Let me give you a couple of reasons why. First of which, experience. He comes in to the New Orleans Saints at just about 26 years old, still a young guy, and has 4 years of experience, 3 years effectively with the Cleveland Browns, and then about half a year with Cleveland before being traded over to the Detroit Lions. Struggled a little bit last year, change of scheme, dealt with some health stuff, and of course has been going through a little bit of a personal battle as well, which brings me to reason number 2 that I think he ends up making this roster, is that this is a guy that's built for exactly this kind of path. Donovan Peoples-Jones' story is pretty remarkable. This is a guy that just 6 days before signing with the New Orleans Saints celebrated his 2 years of sobriety from alcohol. Congratulations, by the way, to DPJ. That is a tough battle to fight, and he is winning it right now. Overcoming that type of adversity has been a big part of what the New Orleans Saints have kind of coveted in a lot of the free agents that they've signed over the course of this offseason. Obviously, it was a big conversation around Tyler Shuck, who's managed and overcome adversity as well, the rookie quarterback who was out there throwing to Donovan Peoples-Jones over the course of that 3-day rookie minicamp, including the two connecting the day that we were there. And there were some really nice throws from Tyler Shuck and some really nice catches from Donovan Peoples-Jones, who I did not see put a ball on the ground. And so I think that from that perspective, knowing that he's somebody that you can bring in that has kind of lived a little bit more life than a lot of 26-year-old people in life, certainly from the sound of it. I mean, him celebrating that just 6 days before signing, he's lived a little bit more of a life than maybe I would have lived at 26 years old. We all have our struggles. But I mean, it's a remarkably impressive piece of his story. And I think that's the kind of thing when you can show that kind of resilience, you don't get signed because of your sobriety, but you get signed because you show your ability to have that kind of resilience. And that is a quality that teams covet. If you can manage that, you can manage losing some games here and there. You can manage dropping a pass on 3rd and 10 at one point in the game, and then have the ability to be able to come back because of that resilience and make an even bigger catch later on in the game. Puts things in perspective that the game of football isn't really as big as it feels sometimes, and allows you to be able to kind of circumvent some of those big things. It's a remarkably impressive piece to his story. And I think that it's part of what's going to make him successful as he looks for sort of a little bit of a career rejuvenation here in New Orleans. And it sounds like he's going to get at least his opportunity to really, really pursue that with Kellen Moore. Third thing, Kellen Moore raved about this guy after in his after the rookie mini camps when he did the media availabilities after the minicamp practice that was open to the media. He kind of talked all about how, he was somebody that looked really good out there, mentioned the success that he had before, that he had been a productive receiver. Just 2 years ago, he was an 835-yard wide receiver. It wasn't until things got a little weird in Cleveland, and then he got traded and all this other stuff. And when I say a little weird in Cleveland, I mean Cleveland itself was weird, not Donovan Peoples-Jones was weird in Cleveland. Cleveland itself got strange with everything that's been going on over there in terms of quarterbacks or lack of quarterback and all of this other stuff. Then he gets traded to the Detroit Lions and never really kind of got his footing there. And so now he gets this opportunity, landing with the New Orleans Saints, trying to get off of that practice squad rotation or stay away from that practice squad rotation that sometimes these veterans enter into. And he gets his chance to be able to be a part of an offense that's going to play to his strengths, because that's what Kellen Moore does. And also he brings a little bit of that physical nature that I think that the New Orleans Saints are going to be looking for at wide receiver. This is a guy that was an imposing force during his days over at Michigan. Didn't necessarily play that style of ball, once he got to the pros, but still found ways to be very successful. I mean, he had a 75-yard reception in his rookie year in 2020 with the Cleveland Browns, had another 60-yard reception the year after that, went from 304 yards to 597 receiving yards to 839 receiving yards over the course of those 3 years. I said 835 earlier. Sorry about that. But then it was in 2023, so not last year, but in 2023 where things kind of, ended up being a little tough for him. Just caught 13 passes for 155 yards during that season playing with those two teams. And then had last year where I believe he was on a practice squad last season, and then he gets an opportunity here in New Orleans to earn a roster spot. And if I'm being completely honest, I think that he's going to do it. He gives the New Orleans Saints at 6'2", 207 pounds, another one of those guys that's maybe a little bit more physical, has a little bit more of a bigger build, kind of puts him in the same class as guys like Bub Means, Cedric Wilson, who's maybe Cedric Wilson a little bit lighter. He's sub 200 pounds. And then Kevin Austin Jr. as kind of the biggest guys on the roster. Saints' tallest wide receivers on the roster are all four of those guys that I just named now, 6'2". That's where they all are. And so you get a guy that can play above the rim, that can play with a bit of physicality, and can go out there and make some tough catches, and can be a slot receiver for you with that size as well. I think that's one of those maybe underrated pieces that ends up having a pretty good role here in New Orleans is or not here in New Orleans. I'm not in New Orleans right now, but in New Orleans, who is going to serve that big slot role? Who's going to serve that slot role, period, in terms of being able to make those tough catches over the middle, run some of those physical routes. One of my favorite things about going back and watching some of Donovan Peoples-Jones tape during his time at Michigan was him as a run blocker in the slot. And then you think about what it is that the New Orleans Saints are doing with guys like Kellen Moore, with a guy like Brendan Nugent, with a guy like TJ Paginetti, who they also brought in. They want to build a successful run game. And one of the best ways for you to be able to build a successful run game is to extend your offensive line. Get those tight ends that can block, like a Jack Stoll, for instance, like a Moliki Mataval, for instance. And then on top of that, you add the slot receivers that can end up, having that ability to block for you and being able to contribute to your rushing offense as a receiver and as a pass catcher. That's major. And this is a guy that can do that and that can move outside and can play the X role and can make some of those tough catches, all that. So for me, when I look at a guy like Donovan Peoples-Jones, as you can tell, there's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of checked boxes here. Guy that can manage adversity, guy that's coming in at a position of need, guy that fills a specific role that the Saints don't necessarily have a player set into, but the role is carved out in this offense. Ability to contribute to the run game, praise of the head coach, connection with the potential starting quarterback, right? They just spent rookie minicamp together. They'll continue to work together now over the course of the offseason. And so I think that being able to build that chemistry from the earliest point of any other wide receiver that's going to be on this roster could potentially have a bit of an impact. Because, right, Rashid Shaheed, Chris Olave, Kevin Austin Jr., Bub Means, Dante Pettis, Mason Tipton, all these guys were on the roster last year, but none of them worked with Tyler Shuck, the first wide receiver on the 90-man roster that will spend the most time with the new quarterback. If Tyler Shuck is the quarterback, is Donovan Peoples-Jones. So all of that, I think, factors in big time. And it's one of the reasons, or the several reasons why I believe he'll probably make the 53-man roster and could potentially contribute in a way that people might not expect going back to that 2023 season and digging into that. Coming up next, the New Orleans Saints were busy on Monday. Not only did they add a wide receiver, but they added another quarterback to that room, and they also added another big-time special teamer that could also make the roster for New Orleans. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by friends over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The NBA playoffs are in full swing. And of course, every night you're looking to deliver on all of that action. And FanDuel is going to give you everything that you need to be able to do that whether you're getting in before tip-off or even live, everything from player props to performance trends, same-game parlays, and a ton more. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's perfect timing for you right now to get signed up. Just head over to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Put $5 down on the money line of a heavy favorite like the Oklahoma City Thunder tonight, 10.5-point favorites over the Denver Nuggets. If you win that, you can walk away with $200. And then you can take a look at Tyler Shuck, who's got the 5th best odds for Offensive Rookie of the Year right now at plus 1,200. Go and check it all out today over at FanDuel and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, family, the New Orleans Saints have signed Iowa State/Iowa Western quarterback Hunter Dekkers after a very impressive showing during rookie minicamp. They also signed defensive back Terrell Burgess, the veteran player that's got some connections to Brandon Staley. We'll dive into that signing here in just a sec. I want to focus in on Dekkers because this is really interesting. A lot of us are kind of looking at the quarterback competition at the top being about Tyler Shuck and Spencer Rattler. But there is Jake Haener in the room. Kellen Moore has said that all three of those guys will battle it out. But now all of a sudden they signed Hunter Dekkers. And so correct me if I'm wrong, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this. But for me, what this kind of feels like is that now there are two quarterback battles. There's a battle for the top quarterback spot, and then there's a battle for another quarterback spot. So there's the battle for the starting quarterback. That is Tyler Shuck and Spencer Rattler. And now it almost kind of feels like there's this additional battle that can go on between Jake Haener and Hunter Dekkers. And Hunter Dekkers was impressive throughout rookie minicamp. The way that he moved, which was very fluid, he moved very well. Mobile guy, accurate passer, has a heck of an arm, left-handed quarterback as well. I mean, I was watching some of the people that were catching passes, not the receivers, but some of the training staff and folks that were Saint staffers that were catching passes. And like, I know some of those guys, and I know that some of those guys are going home with bruises because that left-handed slingshot that he's got was really, really impressive. And remember, this was a guy that was seen as an up-and-coming player during his time at Iowa State. I know that his last season at Iowa State didn't, blow the roof off or anything or jump out of stat sheet, led the conference that he played in and with 14 interceptions over at Iowa State, things like that, 19 touchdowns. But I mean, like the athleticism that he has, the size that he has, 6'1", 207 pounds. So he's got good size, probably going to be 6'2", 6'3" very soon too, maybe be listed at least at that point. And so I think that like those qualities are all things that we saw. Like, how do I explain this? We saw this during rookie minicamp. The rollouts, the throwing on the run, all those other things. When you see those things during rookie minicamp, it kind of tells you that all of that is going to be kind of fundamental to the offense, right? I spoke with edge rushers coach Jay Rogers after practice. I'll have a story about that. We'll cover that here, that conversation as well here on the show later on this week or early next week. And one of the things that he mentioned was like, they do a whole bunch. They give them a whole meal. 5-course, 7-course, 9-course, 14-course, whatever meal in the training room, right? In the film room, in the classroom environment. And then they go out to rookie minicamp and they give like an appetizer of what the defense is going to be. Now that's speaking from the defensive perspective. It's the same thing, if not potentially even more drastic rather, on the offensive side of the football. And so when you go in for rookie minicamps, and you're seeing things like rollouts and RPOs, RPO feeling type things, boot actions, all this other stuff, that's going to be the basic part of the offense. And so you need guys that are going to be able to run all that. And the good news for New Orleans is that Tyler Shuck, Spencer Rattler, Jake Haener, Hunter Dekkers all have a ton of experience doing all of that. And Hunter Dekkers bringing that athleticism, kind of jumping off the practice field a little bit. Tyler Shuck was the guy at quarterback all throughout. Incredibly impressive, really good stuff, excellent stuff. But like Dekkers didn't get lost in the sauce in the midst of all of it, which is super easy to do when you're the quote unquote other quarterback, right? Like think about last year when it was Spencer Rattler and who? It was Kellen Mond, right? And some of you might have said Kellen Mond's name. If you didn't, you understandably were like, I don't know who, right? Because Kellen Mond was simply the other arm at rookie minicamp last year on that tryout situation. And Spencer Rattler was the guy. Hunter Dekkers didn't get lost like that in that way. And Shuck was still the star, the focus. And so kudos to Hunter Dekkers for not only not getting lost in that situation, but convincing or doing enough to convince the New Orleans Saints coaching staff to add that fourth quarterback. Now, one of the things that Kellen Moore said as well when we spoke to him after rookie minicamp was that they do believe, or that like they would be open to the idea of adding another quarterback. He didn't specifically specify veteran quarterback, even though it was in response to a question about a veteran quarterback. He never said, yeah, we would be interested in signing a veteran quarterback if the opportunity presented itself. All that he said was that they've got 3 guys in the building and that, yeah, sometimes you'd like to have 4 and they'll be willing to sign another person if the right opportunity presents itself. Well, it looks like Hunter Dekkers made sure that the right opportunity presented itself, because not only did the Saints sign him, but the Saints signed him and had to move on and open up roster spots for players. So remember I said that they signed Hunter Dekkers and they signed Terrell Burgess. Well, they moved on from safety Millard Bradford as well as running back Jordan Mims, 2 crowded positions now, safety and running back. So not only did Hunter Dekkers do enough to make them sign him, but he did enough to make them sign him, even though they didn't have space to sign him, right? They made him make a tough choice. And if you can make a team make a tough choice in your favor, that's a pretty good situation. So now I'm really interested. How many quarterbacks? They'll have 4, it looks like, going into at least OTAs. We'll see what happens by the time they get to training camp and all this other stuff. But I think this answers or creates a little bit of clarity around two separate questions. How many quarterbacks will they have in training camp? It looks like they're willing to have 4, which makes sense. You want to have a rotation of quarterbacks, keep all the arms fresh, all those other things. It's a good move by New Orleans in that case. The second question is, will they sign a veteran quarterback? Well, maybe they won't. Maybe they feel like their quarterback-heavy coaching staff, between Kellen Moore, Doug Nussmeier at OC, as well as Scott Tolzien at quarterbacks coach, and then you go to their additional offensive advisor in Scott Linehan. These guys have either worked with great quarterbacks or have been NFL quarterbacks. Maybe they don't feel like they need the veteran quarterback because they are the veteran quarterbacks in the building. And so I think that there's like some value there too. So Hunter Dekkers gets his spot. And by the way, Hunter Dekkers went over to Iowa Western. He got caught up in this underage gambling scandal over at Iowa State. It was him and 4 other players. It wasn't just him all by himself. They all pled guilty. He ended up going to Iowa Western and played very well, over 3,800 yards, completed more than 64% of his passes, threw more than 30 touchdowns, and only threw 10 interceptions during that time. So the interception numbers came down, touchdowns went up. Yeah, it was a different level of competition, but hey, he rose to the occasion. And he rose to the occasion clearly here in rookie minicamp as well. So very, very interested to see how this quarterback position plays out as the intrigue just gets juicier and juicier all about. I don't mean to cut the time on Terrell Burgess short, but there's so much to discuss with Hunter Dekkers. We'll come back and look at the safety position at another time. But I think that Terrell Burgess is an interesting player. He comes in at 5'11", around 200 pounds, physical player, downhill player, has mostly been a special teamer and has been connected with Brandon Staley. The two were together back in 2020. And so you get some familiarity there. You get a guy that has been a core special teamer for his units that he's been a part of over the course of his time in the NFL. And you get a guy that might be able to contribute to you depth-wise at the safety position as well. So I think it's a good signing for New Orleans, who are going to be continuing to have these players that they're looking to bring in and, have challenge at the special team side, which is really going to be his way to make the roster and find his way to the roster, all of that. So I think a solid signing by New Orleans to continue to fill that out. They move on from an undrafted free agent from last year's class, Millard Bradford, as a part of this whole situation. And then now all of a sudden, a guy like Terrell Burgess has a real opportunity to, if nothing else, like end up on the practice squad, kind of be a Jonathan Abrams type from what we saw the New Orleans Saints have in previous years. So we'll see which way things go, but a great opportunity, right? When these veterans come in and they do these mandatory minicamp things, you get 2 of those veterans and you get 1 of those rookies signed with the team. That's a really good situation for those young guys to be able to come in and carve those inroads. All right, coming up next, speaking of inroads, the New Orleans Saints are making inroads with one of the top remaining free agents in the NFL, and they very well could sign him later on this offseason. We got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints are carving some inroads with one of the top remaining free agents in the NFL right now, and that is cornerback Asante Samuel Jr. As reported by ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, Asante Samuel Jr. and the New Orleans Saints shared a visit on Monday. This is a name that we've been waiting to hear about for some time. You've listened to the Saints Squad show. Dylan Sanders has been talking a ton about Asante Samuel Jr., why he would make sense for this team. And I agree. I think that he would make sense for the team as well. The biggest question was always going to be around his health. That was always going to be the biggest thing when it came to him. Would he have the opportunity to be able to come in, be healthy, and play? He was dealing with sort of those stinger issues that he said that he had been dealing with basically his entire life. And he went on to have a surgery in April, which is one of the reasons why he hasn't signed over the course of this offseason. He appeared in just 4 games last year, a career low. Appeared in 17 games each of the 2 seasons before that, 12 games his rookie year, has been in the league since 2021, spent time with Brandon Staley with the Los Angeles Chargers, was a part of Brandon Staley's first ever draft class as a head coach in 2021, remained with the Chargers through last year, and then eventually hit the market this season. And now we understand why he hasn't landed anywhere, and it's because of this neck surgery. So he underwent neck surgery back in April. Because of that, he hasn't signed anywhere, but did visit with the Saints on Monday. Here's the important piece, or the other important piece of this. There's a good chance that the Saints end up signing this guy because of the connection that they have between Brandon Staley and Asante Samuel Jr. But what's really going to impact the potential of that signing is going to be a checkup that's set to happen in early May, according to Fowler and his sources. After that, expect the Saints and Asante Samuel Jr. to come together again and discuss how things are going. Did he get cleared by the doctor? Did he get the all clear? Did he get the okay? Is he medically okay to go? And if he is, I would not be shocked to see him sign a contract here in New Orleans. And that contract could be a 1-year kind of prove it, just above veteran minimum kind of deal. It could be an incentive heavy deal that starts at veteran minimum and builds up, or starts around veteran minimum and builds up. I'm not trying to shortchange Asante Samuel Jr. He was the Los Angeles Chargers' top cornerback, no doubt about it. 6 interceptions over the course of his 40-plus games during that time. Came up as well with 176 tackles during those seasons as well. And so he is somebody that makes a lot of sense and can sign and has the talent, all those other things. But I just think that with this injury, teams are going to do things to kind of safeguard that contract. Either you're going to have to do approve it for a year, or you're going to have to, which doesn't necessarily mean just taking veteran minimum. That could be the case, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. It could just be above veteran minimum. 1 year, $3 million, 1 year, $6 million. And then some of that money isn't guaranteed, right? And so you could potentially have, a cut bait at some point. 2 years, $6 million, 2 years, $7 million, something like that. But only $3 million of it's guaranteed, which effectively makes it a 1 year, $3 million contract. Like, the Saints have some money to spend here. They're not going to go and spend all of their money on, a corner in July or anything like that, when they have, a pretty busy cornerback room, right? Like, the Saints kind of have their starters. Now, you can argue about who some of those starters are. Kool-Aid McKinstry starting on one side. Alante Taylor starting somewhere, either on the other side or in the slot. And then it's either Isaac Yiadom or it's Quincy Riley that's signing and starting somewhere, or that's starting somewhere else. And so with those 4 guys, you have 3 starter quality corners. But what if you could have another? Like, be greedy. You can't have enough cornerbacks. And for New Orleans, who also has Rico Payton, by the way, who often gets, as I was talking about Hunter Dekkers not getting lost in the sauce, like, who often gets lost in the sauce, and a Rico Payton in this situation, who also performed incredibly well at corner during his time in the preseason, and also is a fantastic special teamer for the Saints. Has been a terrific gunner opposite JT Gray, the special teams captain. And so signing a guy like Asante Samuel Jr. puts him into your training camp, and it gives him an opportunity to come and fight for a spot. Could be a veteran practice squad guy, for instance, anything like that. Or maybe Rico Payton goes back to the practice squad and just gets elevated a few times. We'll see. But I do think that this is worth a look. And look, Asante Samuel Jr. is just 25 years old. You're not talking about signing a 30-something here, a 34, 35-year-old player. you're helping to still make your roster younger in this occasion. And so if you can sign him, maybe he plays on the outside. I'm not so quick to say they don't play on the inside. He's got the size to play on the inside because he's a smaller guy, and typically smaller guys in the NFL kind of get put into that role. But he only played he only played 37 snaps in the slot over the course of Brandon Staley's time as his head coach and defensive play caller. So I don't think that Brandon Staley looks at him as a slot corner, although he could Jalen Ramsey it, right? Hey, you haven't really done this, but look, this role is really intriguing and could be really good for you. Let's put you here. Like, he could go that route. And so maybe you move him around and give him the opportunity to try to make the roster because he can contribute at multiple spots. Solid way to make a roster. But I think that's going to be the conversation around Asante Samuel Jr. is like, can he stay healthy and can he earn a role? Those are going to be the big things. And if he does here in New Orleans, then like power to him and power to the New Orleans Saints for having this outstanding secondary all of a sudden, despite having lost Marshawn Lattimore and Paulson Adebo, two players that they had become accustomed to playing without over the course of the past few years. But kudos to the quick rebuild in that situation with either young players like Kool-Aid McKinstry or Alante Taylor, or new faces like Quincy Riley, bringing back Isaac Yiadom, maybe not a new face, but new again type face, and then maybe adding an Asante Samuel Jr., continuing to build with a young guy like Rico Payton. Like, there's a lot of that kind of rebuild feel to that side of the defense, or to that area of the defense. And so I would keep an eye out on this. I think that if he comes back in 2020, what am I doing? If he comes back in July and says, look, I'm medically cleared, it's safe, I'm comfortable, I'm ready to go out there and play, the stingers aren't bothering me, the surgery was successful, the rehab was easy, all this other stuff, that's a good opportunity for New Orleans, and it's a good opportunity for Asante Samuel Jr. to land here too. Now, the big question will be, does he get a better offer somewhere else and the Saints are willing to give him? Remember, the Saints are really good at giving a number and sticking to a number. Or 2B, does he end up getting a starting role offered to him somewhere else, a la 2024 Isaac Yiadom, right? Isaac Yiadom would have stayed here in New Orleans and been the fourth corner on the roster. Or he could go to San Francisco and fight for a starting job. So he wisely went to San Francisco to fight for a starting job. So Asante Samuel Jr. could get a similar opportunity elsewhere that could take him away from signing with the New Orleans Saints, and would completely understand that. But I think there's a good chance that the Saints end up signing Asante Samuel Jr. here. Early July is going to be the key date. So we'll get a look at that before the Saints even get out to training camp, which is really solid there too. So we'll see where things go. So maybe you get Asante Samuel Jr., he gets on the phone with Keenan Allen and they try to get Keenan Allen over, although they might have scratched their itch at wide receiver at this point with the addition of Donovan Peoples-Jones. We'll see which way things go from there. All right. Coming up in tomorrow's show, I want to take a deeper look at Terrell Burgess, what he brings, and the safety position, because that's now becoming a crowded room. But I don't want to get too much further away from the Derek Carr quarterback situation either. So I want to take a look at the three quarterbacks that have been said to have an opportunity at the starting job, and we'll throw Hunter Dekkers in there as well. So we'll take a deeper look at all of that in tomorrow's episode. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me on the show. If you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation, I'll holla at you.